Hello and welcome to the Permaculture Herbalism segment of the Elder Tree podcast. I am your host, Tennille Christensen from Earth Mama, where I teach people how to thrive and get skilled for sustainability. As an educator, kitchen witch, and plant lover, I welcome you to tune in as I interview permaculturalists from around the world. We will learn holistic ways of integrating plants into our homes, gardens, and communities for healing. Together, we will explore the art and science of this regenerative design system and harvest the collective wisdom. Permaculture offers a pathway to empower people to develop their lifestyles and landscapes. So let's discover how to grow and know plants with a purpose. I am super excited today to have Liana Toth, and she has so much to share about her life in the Daintree, the beautiful ancient rainforest of far north Queensland, and the work that she does with ClimateForce. So let's just open it up and welcome. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today, Liana.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here today, Tennille. And it's really wonderful to be invited to share on the Elder Tree podcast because I feel I'm really grateful to be in remembrance of herbs and the value that they've added in my life. And just being here is bringing so much up for me today. So thank you as well.
Awesome. Yay. I'm excited to hear some of your ancestral stories just in our pre-talking. You've got this like history and this wealth, and you work with plants every single day as a nursery manager of ClimateForce. So it'd be great for our community to hear about that kind of work that you're doing on the ground, and then also, in your everyday life, living in the Daintree and the kind of lifestyle that you have working with the plants. But first, let's just start with the conversation of permaculture. Like, why is it an important aspect of your life?
Yeah, so like you shared, especially living in the Daintree, we are surrounded by this ancient rainforest, oldest rainforest in the world. And to me, permaculture is a lot about mimicking that rainforest type of setting and to try and bring in a very high biodiverse system of plants and species into the garden space to kind of loop back into that forest to food cycle. And so I get a lot of inspiration from the rainforest and definitely feel that integrating all those layers and different levels into the garden is so important. But it's also a lifestyle choice, and it's I feel like it's a way of living. It's like taking that organic, more holistic way of living with me everywhere I go, which I definitely have created, especially with having that being a focus at work and then being such an important part of my life here at home to be able to just go out to the garden and pick different plants for teas or to make meals with, and also to know that we've got bees that are pollinating all the flowers and all the trees, the fruiting trees in the garden, and just a really rich interconnected system, which is so enriching to be a part of as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's a beautiful integration, isn't it? Because you have these systems at home, and then you leave to go to work and you continue that. Like, the plants are such a big part of your life, and you're specializing in natives, but now it would be great if you want to share like where ClimateForce is going and what you're doing with productive plants as well. So that kind of nutritional and food healing, as well as, because I guess natives generally come into the space where when people are gardening, they're bringing natives in for a generation, and to support all of the native animals and food sources from that perspective of like actively planting them, when it's not just like appreciating nature in its full native expression. So you guys are taking or you're I guess inheriting, or you're working with degraded land that's been, yeah, what's the story there? Like, how do you come across these big projects to be planting out lots of natives?
Yeah, so we've started off on a property over in Cape Kimberley, which is about 382 hectares, and it's an old fallowed banana farm. And the history of that land is really interesting. Actually, it was an organic banana farm, and so when we took over it, we were kind of in competition with a cattle farmer who really wanted to have the land to have his cows on, and so we were kind of like butting heads, trying to. We were on this like native tree vision, and it was a bit of a not a battle, but definitely different visions and different choices that were playing out at that time. And we really wanted to continue the organic status of the property because it firstly felt like being so close to the Great Barrier Reef, the Daintree River, and the national park, that it was really important to be very conscious about what we're using on the soil, what's going to run into the waterways, the impact that that could have on the river system and the Great Barrier Reef. And so, yeah, we started just focusing on a wildlife corridor and trying to repair, because it had been fallowed for so long. It was just just guinea grass, like full blown walls and walls of guinea grass. And so, uh, trying not to have like this full approach of war on weeds and a war on nature, organic, doing things like certified organic has really helped to integrate more of a like, we had to tackle these weeds, but we wanted to also work with other weeds that were arising on the property and not be fully against weeds necessarily. And so, yeah, the vision was to start with a wildlife corridor. That was about 4 years ago. And we did grow, we've grown about 16,000 trees, native trees now, that go from a road over, reaching into like towards where the mangrove system and the Daintree River is flowing. And since then, we've seen like literally completely barren guinea grass fields turn into just like almost already a forest that's created habitat for cassowaries and endangered tree kangaroos, and we've seen dingoes come through and piggies, all sorts of life. But yeah, especially to see those native endangered animals of the Daintree rainforest be able to find habitat there so soon has been a really beautiful part of this process. And so we had it. We've gone through all sorts of different trials, like I've been sharing about, like this war on weeds kind of mentality. Um, a lot of the process with the regen organically is try and reach canopy cover to block out the weeds from the sun. But a lot of the time we were noticing that the weeds aren't actually, if they're not growing taller than the tree and dominating the tree, they're not actually causing too much of a problem. So we were able to implement quite a few different trials in the different rows that we were growing. And I had dibs on one of the trials, and I decided a permaculture style trial in the first rows, where I decided that we should really grow some rhizome species in between the trees. So we had the trees growing about 1 meter to 800 mils apart, and in between those we planted different native gingers and different native cardamoms and all sorts of different shrubby species. And within a year, the guys that were managing the paddock had said that those rows were pretty much, they could walk away from it. It was almost like an enclosed system where the weeds were very, very small. There was like Centella asiatica, goticola growing, and pinto peanut, and all these really nice sort of delicate kind of plants that weren't causing any problems at all. And so that was really encouraging, because a lot of so within the trials, there's like whippersnipping, and hand weeding was a big one when we first started. We got called medieval peasants because I remember we were like, yeah, hand weeding the guinea grass out, and people were like, "You're crazy! Like, you guys have to use chemical spray. You have to use Roundup. There is no way you're going to be able to do what you want to do without spraying." And there was only three of us, Barnaby, Jack, and myself at that time. And Jack and I were both super stubborn, and we were just like, no, we have to like get this happening organically. Like, there's no way we're going to use spray. And so, yeah, hand weeding at the start was a big part of getting through that, which was really hard work. And I'm glad that now we've moved into a little bit more of a mechanical approach and just spreading trees a little further so that they can be mowed through.
Yeah.
But also, that's with the native trees. We are now going to start planning a bit more of a grid system where we will be planting productive trees. So a big part of the shift towards productive trees, we have been growing a lot of food around the work area, the shed, the community shed, and we've got community gardens there. And food has always been a really important part of community resilience and also food security, because the Daintree, you get stuck there so easily, so often. Like, it becomes an island, especially cyclones or even just flooding. And the amount of times that we've had food shortages, it's just become a real norm. And it's a big part of the local community, I think, that people know that they need to be a little bit more resilient and self-sufficient. And so, like, the farm system, a really big focus has been to have fully, as we're off grid, to have a good solar panel system on the big farm shed that can host different members of the community, different volunteers from all over the world, but also locals that want a place to just learn and also be a part of sharing. And so the community gardens has always been a thing, and growing, we've got a food forest that we've been growing for a few years as well, where we've got quite a lot of fruit that's already fruited within 3 to 4 years. So like jackfruits and soursops and Brazil cherries and Rolinias and heaps of turmeric, so much turmeric, heaps of papaya, really delicious papaya, organic watermelons and pumpkins. And yeah, so food's been a big part. But in the last 2 years, there's been a really big collapse in the sugarcane industry around the Mossman area, particularly. And we've just been noticing, like, farmers in Mossman have been hosting meetings and literally just looking for any other ideas. And ClimateForce has come up a lot at these meetings, even if we haven't been there. And they've been asking, like, what are they doing at ClimateForce? How are they actually able to make an income growing native trees? Is it possible that there's other things that we can grow? And like the seeking for answers from the local community is really strong right now. It doesn't feel like there are a lot of answers that are going to meet, like, people need to feed their family, and so financial return, but then also a lot of these farmers are older. How are they going to do that work themselves? And so it's really inspired our team to realize that, yeah, what we're doing is so important on a local level, but especially like right now, what we want to deliver in like 5 to 10 years time actually needs to be delivered now. And so this year we've decided to integrate productive trees with our native trees in our fourth plant out, which is super exciting. At the moment, I'm growing up to 1,000 Theobroma cacao. And so, like, just to be focusing on potting up productive trees has been really close to my heart already. So, yeah, we are going to integrate the cacao and durians and some champerdak just to start off. And we've found that cacao's probably a really good one because it's a subcanopy species, and so it grows really well in rainforest systems. But excuse me, as far as we understand, a lot of the plantations that our populations rely on have had a lot of trouble with diseases, or they're getting a lot older. And so to integrate growing cacao, not just as a monoculture, but growing cacao with a high diverse system surrounding it, feels like it's really important. But also our vision is that it's going to do really well and that we're going to have a lot of yield for cacao. And yeah, just to see what kind of opportunities that could open up in the local Douglas Shire and in our region in general, because there is so like thousands and thousands and thousands of hectares of land that literally just looks like it's been completely abandoned. And yeah, we're hoping that we're going to help provide some guidance, maybe some workforce in future, but a bit of a blueprint as to how we can start to work together communally to repair that land, but also to create some sort of industry and yield, so that we're not getting all of our goods from other parts of the world.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful story and so important because there's just like the sugar industry really dominates North Queensland area, and it's these crazy monocultures. There's just so much chemical use, and it's into the relationship between what's happening on the reef often gets blamed on the sugarcane farmers because they're in the lower areas close to the river systems that's leading out there. And cacao is just chocolate. Like, is that as a yield? That's a growing industry, right? And everyone loves chocolate, and they're wanting. I think the majority of people really consider, okay, well, yeah, how can I get a quality chocolate that's not going to be coming from the source of the Amazon rainforest is being cut down to grow a monoculture of cacao. Like, that's not a sustainable farming practice. So it's really, really exciting for me to hear that you guys are doing this in such a holistic and regenerative way, and that vision. Yeah, I can imagine there's only going to be good things coming from that kind of agroecology farming system for the health of those plants as well. And then mixing in durian and Champadak, like they're all what great yield. Like, and durians, like they live for hundreds of years, right? Like they're such a long-term, incredible plant. I just want to share a little story and acknowledge that I don't know if you remember this, but Blake and I totally remember this story so well, where we drove up to Mossman to markets to find some durian because we were just craving durian, and it was like, oh, we've almost missed the whole season. We can't grow it in our climate. So we were gone for this day trip, and then it all sold out. And you were like, I've got some, and I'll share it with you. And we sat in the park and just like ate this most amazing durian, and we were like, this woman is so lovely for sharing this fruit with us. It was like, I don't know if anyone could. I guess if you've tasted it and you know how good durian is, you get that kind of like, oh, I really, really want some, and then the disappointment of there not being any, and then you saving the day. We were like so grateful.
Yeah, that was quite a divine encounter, not planned at all. It was really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for
It's
that.
such a feel good food, right? Like I notice whenever, because we've been eating a lot of durians to be growing the seeds at work. And it's like we'll have a team meeting in the farm shed and we'll all be like very serious and talking about all the things we need to do. And then like our local durian farmer will rock up with a crate of durians and starts cracking them open. We all start eating it and everyone's just like so enlivened and moods just like boosted. Everyone's just light again and in such a great mood. And it's like I kind of see it as tiger food. Like it's so full power. To think that tigers in Sumatra would have and could eat durians, like it's really one of those fruits that I can pretty much just eat durian. If I eat that during the day, I know I'm going to have so much energy throughout the day. Like it's very, very full power food.
It is. Yeah, the flavor is something. I think the smell puts people off, but if you then eat it and you have the association with the smell, your body just is like, once you receive the goodness, and it's called the king of fruits, right? So you've got the mangosteens, the queen, yeah, and the durian's the king. Like, I just love that story as well. Yay.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you for sharing all of that. I think everyone's kind of like, okay, ClimateForce is doing this really awesome thing of integrating natives and like yielding fruit trees that are going to have this, I guess, economic and an economic effect. There's all of those environmental like awesomeness around that, interplanting and integrating, especially on this marginal land that has, probably been clapped out from sugarcane, and giving, I guess, pathways to farmers to look at what perennial trees that are more sustainable to grow in that particular climate. There's these pathways evolving for them through the work that you're doing. And then the economic benefits of employment for people in the communities, and the food provenance. Like, I know people who travel to Asia to go to eat durian. Like, they
Mm.
go on an annual durian like holiday, and yeah, the Daintree is such a special climate in comparison to the rest of Australia. And so, being the region that is growing the chocolate for Australia, if we can, there's already a few different chocolate businesses up there that are doing things from, the seed to production. But yeah, if you guys are then leading the way in how to do it in an agroforestry setting, where you have all of the benefits of that, of a system supporting the growth habits and nutrient, um, because you can grow chocolate in many different ways, and it can be the monoculture and it can be sprayed, and so it's really good to have these pilots or these examples of farms in the same region where people can lean into and learn from the experience, learn from what you guys are actually doing on the ground. So thank you. From a
Mm.
home perspective, like your little family there, how are you integrating plants from a herbalism perspective? So, when you lean into them for healing and for health.
Yeah, so I mean, I have so many different herbs and plants that I've been integrating daily into my life for years now. One that pops up in mind is Bacopa mineri, Brahmi. That's been
Brahmi,
with
yep.
me for many, 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 many years. And my daughter is turning 7 this year, and I used it a lot before she was born, but I found that I especially appreciated it in the postnatal or postpartum period, especially for postnatal depression, but also it's just such a mental support. Like I definitely noticed my memory improving, mental clarity, sharpness, and focus. And I think being such a managerial type of woman and managing so much in the workspace, but then so much at home. Like we have quite a large property with a lot of fruit trees, and they require a lot of work as well. And just to have mental clarity and mental focus feels like it's been a really important part of my life, especially in the last decade. And so I found Brahmi is one that I've really, really leaned on in the last few years, and even had experiences where I've had like a really, really sore tummy for some reason, not really knowing why, nothing was helping. And this has happened a few times. And I'd intuitively go to my herb garden and just spend a bit of time with the different herbs in the garden and just tune in. And I'd always sort of find Brahmi and just like eat, because it's so bitter. I'd really have to force myself to just eat a little bit, and found that it was, yeah, it's just helped in so many ways. Did help ease like bitterness in the stomach as well. So yeah, that's been a really big one. I also love the elder tree. I love that this podcast is like the name of this podcast. I really, really love the elder tree. And when I was about 17, I returned home to my motherland in Hungary, and I got to meet my great grandmother who lived in a little village on the outskirts of Hungary. And like when I met her, she was the most amazing woman I'd ever met. She was like this little tiny woman who was in her 90s and was out in her garden all day. And she grew all her food, everything, like put everything aside for the winter, had her corn and her potatoes and her walnut trees and her fruit trees, and literally grew everything, put it aside for the winter so that they had food in the winter. And one of the trees that really stuck out was she had elder trees growing all on the boundary of her property. And I have read like a few folklore, uh, traditional stories about the elder tree being like a protective presence and to protect your family and to keep the spirits that you don't want to come near your home away. And that's been one thing that I really noticed, that it had this real presence and protective field around her property. And also just how much she would use the flowers to make her cordials and her drinks, and just collect kilos and kilos of flowers and like brew it all up and make these beautiful drinks out of it. And yeah, so the elder tree I have growing in my garden as well. And obviously, like being the berry being so good for your immunity when you have a cold or a flu or a cough, and just how powerful that berry is for that. Um, I love having that tree nearby here in Australia as well.
Absolutely. It's such a I feel like everybody, like our listeners, might be a little bit inspired by the elder tree as well, because we all talk about it so much. And I did a whole episode. Maybe I'll put that in the show notes. I just dedicated an entire episode to the elder tree plant. Because yeah, like we named the organization after that. It means something, right? As far as these incredible helpers. Yeah, the Brahmi is a great one. No one's really actually brought that one forward before, and I think, being where you're such a tropical place, climate there, it grows so well. And I used to have a bed of Brahmi. Like in the wet seasons, if we have a big wet season, it'll just spread and take over an entire area. And it was just like this gorgeous lawn area. And I'd just go and lay in the Brahmi patch and just like pick little bits of it. But I think it was like the laying in the patch that I was like, oh, this feels so amazing. So how do you grow it? Like, have you got it in pots, or is it like sprinkled all throughout the garden in little nooks and crannies?
No, I like that Zen space idea that you just shared. I've got like a little dedicated garden bed to just Brahmi, where I've got it in a bit of a raised garden bed with rocks around it, and just Brahmi. And it's like something so Zen about it, with just this beautiful little tiny leaves that run along the ground. And I even love weeding that garden bed more than any other garden bed, because I just like any grasses that start to pop out. It's just so satisfying to take them out and just see just the Brahmi there. So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
like a Brahmi carpet. Like this beautiful flat carpet.
it's like a carpet. Yeah. I do have it sprinkled in some garden areas, but I find it's harder to access when it's in amongst everything else. So it's nice to just dedicate a bed to the Brahmi.
Yeah, beautiful. And so easy to propagate too, hey? Like it's got the little
Very
runners, and once you've got it in, it spreads.
Yeah, and it grows well in the Daintree, but I've seen people out in Wandekla and Ravenshoe also growing it pretty well as long as it's getting frequent water. It seems to grow well. And I think there's
Yeah.
two type of Brahmis. There is, I don't know the botanical name for it, but there is a native one that grows in like lakes and dams, and it's a lot more bitter than the Bacopa
Ah,
Mineri is the Indian version, I'm pretty
yes.
sure. And that one is not as bitter, but this native one, a little bit bigger leaves, a bit of a lighter green, it's even more bitter. And I've seen it
Wow.
growing in like waterways and dams up around Ravenshoe. So yeah, I think
Oh, good to know.
there's options.
Yeah, gorgeous. Right, so was that your favorite plant that you would recommend to have in a home garden, or is there another one out there?
I also really love Adianthus hispidulum, the maidenhair fern.
Ooh. Hey, this is a quick interlude just to say thanks for listening and to let you know that all of this is provided on a volunteer basis, 4 episodes a month to get this amazing information out to our community. So if you love this, if you want to hear us keep providing this service, then please, if you can, support us by buying us a cuppa, which is in the links below. It's super easy. You can just send us a few bucks and it will help us cover our costs. And then you could become a Patreon supporter as well and receive some cool things from all of the great interviewees we have. Or you could just leave a comment below and share the podcast with your friends and family so we can spread the good news. Now, this episode actually was a take 2 because the sound cut out halfway through, and Liana so amazingly offered to join me a few days later and do the recording again so that we can deliver this conversation in a whole session, because there was just so much beauty to explore in what was shared in this interview. So without further ado, let's get back into the interview, take 2. So could you tell me about this fern that you have surrounding you and in your garden? Why is that so special?
So I really love the maidenhair fern, especially because when I tend to go for deeper explorings into the rainforest, I always find it next to creek sides or especially at the base of waterfalls. And it's a very delicate, beautiful little fern already. But I did a little bit of research on it and I found that it is edible and that you can use it in teas. And I did some experimenting with it and I used it in some teas and just found it had a very soothing, grounding, calming effect. And then I later found that it also has, it can draw heavy metals out of the brain. And so it's felt really beautiful to bring a little bit of the rainforest in around my home and our living space, and just to have bits of that fern growing around even the house. So as soon as I walk down the stairs, there's all sorts of different herbs growing, but to have a native fern from the rainforest, I really love having the presence of that fern, especially nearby, and hoping that it starts to, and it has slowly started to just spread its own little spores and become, rather than weeds or grass becoming what's native around the home, but that becomes what's native around the home. So it's like next to my mugwort and mother of all herbs and all my other little herbal medicine garden, and it's in amongst it.
I love that. So you've got these kind of introduced, I think in the herbal realm, we bring in and we borrow plants that have come from all around the world and embed them into our gardens because there's knowledge and there's information about them and uses that, we want to use from a health and herbalism perspective. So I really appreciate how you're utilizing the native the native medicines and bringing them in. Is there, so you've
Mm.
like Brahmi, the fern, it's like a lot of like brain and clarity kind of healing. Is there an experience in your life where you can kind of go back to the beginnings of where your trust in the plants or that first experience of embodying a bit of a health journey and being being healed by plants? Is there a story in your life or a pivotal point where that happened?
Yeah, definitely. So I have a few experiences, but the very first experience that I had was a very significant one for me. And I was living in Hungary for at least a year, and I was having a little bit of a hard time acclimatizing to the climate, the culture, the language, the general rhythm of life over there. I think also being just in the northern hemisphere, you know, the stars are different. Everything's just quite different to the southern hemisphere here. And one day I was walking through a handcrafting market in the countryside, which is a market where only people that would make things with their hands, literally, would be able to sell their produce or products there. And I already found that quite amazing, like the creativity and all the beautiful little things people were coming up with. But I especially was quite attracted to this one store that had an older man who was dressed up in traditional Hungarian clothes, and he had this very makeshift stall that was just made out of wood, and you could see it been put together there. And he had like an array of tinctures at the front of his stall. And so I looked through the tinctures, and one really stood out to me. It was called Ambrosia. And so I bought that tincture intuitively. I didn't really know much about it. Later, I found out that that herb grew around the Hungarian countryside and on the edges of the cities as a weed. And people tended to have a lot of allergic reactions to that weed, especially when it was in flowering. And so a lot of people had this dislike toward this plant, and it literally grew everywhere. And so a few days later, I remember the actual taking of this tincture, and I took a drop or a teaspoon on an empty stomach. And literally a few hours later, I went into this really intense fever. And for about 3 days, I was stuck in the bed in my grandmother's apartment in Budapest. And I just went through this really intense sweating detox and couldn't move, was just stuck there. And I remember in the moment being like, who is this man? What has he done to me? Like, what have I taken? Like, no one was there. I was on my own. And I was kind of like a little bit worried at first because I just had never experienced anything like this before. And I was like, I just trusted this random, like, cultural guy and just look what's happening to me. But afterwards, once the fever had passed, I felt so good. Like, physically, I felt really robust, but also mentally, I was a lot more positive and present, and it felt like I went through a really big shift after taking that herb, with just being a lot more of a participant in the culture and with the people, and like I could actually immerse into the environment properly. And after that experience, I actually called him up, and I was just like so amazed at how good I felt and how the experience was, that I called this man up and I was just like, can I please be your apprentice? I had really bad broken Hungarian at that time. And he was like, could hardly understand me. He's like, what? Who are you? I was like, look, I'm learning Hungarian. I'm doing my best, but please, like, take me in. I'd love to learn from you. And he did. And we ended up for like about a year or two, I apprenticed with him, and I learnt so much. And so I was like his sidekick, and we went around the forest and we'd pick lots of different herbs from the forest. We'd also go to the parks and like more public areas, and we would juice the herbs and preserve them in fresh honey. And then that's how he would sell these different herbs at the markets. And so I would accompany him. I would dress up in the traditional Hungarian attire as well, and like be out there selling these different tinctures. And the most amazing thing was, beyond my own experience, was to see how many people kept on coming back and buying his product, and had all of their own unique testimonies where they had, for example, had to be on pharmaceutical prescription drugs for, say, low blood pressure, or thyroid problems, or all sorts of different ailments. And they just said that from that moment on, they didn't need to take those pharmaceutical medicines anymore, and that these herbs have helped them shift to a more natural way of treating their bodies. And that really amazed me, because I'd never witnessed that before, especially in Australia. I obviously wasn't rubbing shoulders with those communities enough yet to see that there is that kind of movement here in Australia as well. But it was a good introduction for me that herbs, if they can be used as preventatives, but they can also be powerfully used as healers for all sorts of problems. And so that was the beginning.
Oh, that's such an incredible insight and opportunity. And yeah, and so interesting too that you found it when you went back home to your roots. And what was the experience of living with your grandmother or great grandmother? Was she into plants as well? Is that sort of part of your
Yeah.
ancestry?
Yeah. So she was pretty much completely self-sufficient, and she was so unique in the sense, for me, that she was born in the house that she grew up in. She never traveled, and she later died in that house, and she had all her children in that house. Like, she was her own midwife, she was her own doctor, she was her own food grower, her own gardener. She grew everything. She had so many different herbs in the garden, and she would grow all the food in the summer and put it all aside in the winter. And she was very quiet. So even though she had such a deep connection to herbs and her garden already, I think I was a little more of an outsider coming in from Australia. And she really, like, having never traveled, never ever caught a plane before, my lifestyle or where I came from would have been so foreign to her that I just remember, like, asking her so many questions. And she was generally quite quiet. She wouldn't say too much. My best pastime with her was we would sit for hours in silence cracking walnuts from her tree, and like our hands would become stained with the green stain from the walnuts, and like they were the most delicious walnuts I'd ever tasted. And just like realizing that this walnut tree has been in our family for generations. And yeah, it was very grounding. And it was also nice to just accept that, okay, you're not a woman of many words. You're a very hardworking, busy woman, and it's okay to just be here in silence and work together. I think in the end, she just had so much work to do. That was where the time spent together was valued, was just like, okay, you're here to visit me. You want to know about me. Great. Get a mattock, help me dig out the gardens for the potatoes and the corn, and help me crack walnuts, help me weed the elderberry bush. And yeah, so that was also a really beautiful experience to have met her while she was alive. Don't think I've ever met anyone like her since.
And maybe some parts of yourself are very similar in terms of living in a rural area and the self-sufficiency aspect and working hard.
Get on with it and get the work done. Yeah.
And sometimes it's the language of service. And when we reflect and look back, there's so many lessons and things said without actually using words that are communicated across. Yeah.
Yeah, and almost like a sense of emotional regulation that can take place without words, and just being in the presence of someone who is very grounded and calm and settled and knows their place in the world and wants nothing else, has no ambitions beyond that, and to just like ground in that presence. I felt like that was what I needed in my early 20s of heavily seeking, what is life? What is this whole story? What's my place here?
Amazing. It sounds like a wonderful trip. And so how is it that you ended up now in this special place of the Daintree and doing this work with native plants? Is there, like, what drew you to the Daintree to be living there? And are there any endemic or native plants there that kind of have spoken to you in a similar way?
Yeah, so when I first moved to the Daintree, when I first came to the Daintree, I remember just being very much amazed at just the purity of the landscape, like the pure water, the clean air, and just the forests. Especially, it felt like it was probably about 15 years ago. The forests seemed a lot more wild and raw then, and I just fell in love with the environment. And I actually did a permaculture course down in Noosa when I first moved to the Daintree, and that already instilled appreciation of plants and gardening, and that experience that I'd had in Hungary with my great grandmother and with Vilmos, this herbalist, the older man. And I also ended up working on a lot of organic farms in Hungary. It instilled this like deep desire to learn how to grow food more sustainably, more harmoniously and organically, because I'd worked on a lot of farms in Australia and especially Mariba area, and just found myself quite shocked by a lot of the farming practices, with the amount of synthetic chemicals was pumped onto the fruit trees, for example, and just had this realization that we are an extension of our environment. If we are what we eat, then like I'm full of chemicals. And really wanting to learn, like, how can we do things differently? How can we do things in a way that is regenerative and that is going to not take so much away from the soil and the landscape? And so permaculture was definitely the start of learning how to, I guess, more the confidence to just give it a go, like learning a lot of techniques. And there's so much actual teaching within the permaculture course, but the confidence to just get out there. Like, really, in the end of the day, you have to practice for 2 years before you can start to call yourself a permaculturalist. And then through those experiences, you just learn more. And I completely agree with that now, like getting out there and just learning what grows well with other plants. Just firsthand experience is so valuable. And so yeah, I just had my own food forests and was growing. I was on this like self-sufficient journey. I really just wanted to like mimic my grandmother's story in the rainforest up here, or on the edge of the rainforest, and found that I became more and more passionate about the native rainforest as well as I was growing my garden and trees alongside of that, and was just more and more amazed at how beautiful this intricate system of recycling really is, and how it just needs no input from humans. It's just doing its thing, and it has been for so long. And I started to just have some interactions with, I guess, a lot of land clearing, a lot of not very environmental practices, and also just seeing things happening alongside, say, the Daintree River, and just like year after year seeing the erosion along the Daintree River getting worse and worse, and no trees planted alongside the riverway, no trees going up the creeks further. Like the decimation and the land clearing was so brutal. I was quite shocked by it. And so rather than being one to just complain about it all the time, I realized that like this is something that I just need to put my hands towards something more positive than being that person that's unhappy with the situation in the environment around me. And the way I started working with ClimateForce was really quite organic. And I remember before we started working on that property at Cape Kimberley, there was the cattle farmer that was there. He had asked me to randomly look after his cattle. And so I was, but it was really random. I didn't really know this guy. He's from Dimbula, but he'd come down every now and again to the Daintree and was like, here's the keys to the gate. Can you look after the cattle? And then Barney, the CEO and the founder of ClimateForce, one day, he was my neighbor at the time. He's like, I found him really inspiring because he was doing all this great stuff around the world, but also was starting to like come back to Australia and wanting to do stuff in Australia. And he was saying, see that farm there, the banana farm, the old banana farm? I really want to regenerate it. Like it's been fallow for years. I've got my eyes on that farm. I'm going to make it happen somehow. And I was like, oh, funny you say that. I've got the keys to the gate. Let's go have a look. And so we went in and like the shed was an absolute dump pile. Like there was just trash everywhere and it was pretty intense. And the guinea grass was a wall, and there was already a nursery in place there. And I remember at the time we had no tools, and he was like chainsawing a path through the guinea grass to get to the nursery. And once we saw the nursery, he was like, this is perfect. Like this is where we can make the magic happen, the generator room for the trees to grow. So from that moment on, it was just like, yeah, I'll grow the trees. Like it just all kind of really synchronistically, but organically flowed together. And yeah, the more that project started to develop, the more I developed a relationship with the Gugu custodians and started working together with traditional owners, which is such an important piece in healing country. And I started really to learn more about the endangered species on that property that were no longer there, but that belonged there. And just little by little started to stumble across these different endangered species. One that's really interesting is the Phlegmarius dalhousiana, the blue tassel fern, which is just the most beautiful ancient looking fern. And there's different species in that family that sometimes you can see again at waterfalls up in the top of the canopy, and just like this beautiful kind of it's hard to describe, but it looks very ancient, prehistoric. And we ended up working with some botanists from JCU in Cairns and found that there's only 3 left of this blue tassel fern in the wild. And we did a couple of different surveys of the property and found that that blue tassel fern was growing on the land that we were wanting to regenerate, and it would have originally been there. And yes, I started to get really curious and asking questions about like, what happened to this land? What's the story behind this country? What did the traditional custodians use this land for? And how did it end up where it is today? And sort of didn't really direct those questions anywhere. But then one day it was really interesting because there was a local farmer who was helping us burn the guinea grass, do a controlled burning of the guinea grass before we did one of our plant outs. And he started telling this story, and it was this, he was like, this is like a real full circle moment for me. And he was a really jolly, happy, friendly, lovely character, like in so many ways, so innocent. I've got nothing bad to say about him. But the story he shared with me was like the horrors in that moment. He started saying that when he was a boy, he remembers being on the bulldozers with his family as the bulldozers were going day and night, 24/7 for 3 months straight, and just bulldozing trees through that Daintree region to basically clear the land for agriculture. And I was so shocked. I was like, what do you mean day and night? Like non-stop? Like, why didn't you guys have a break? And he said that back then in that time, it was easier to get away with doing a job first than asking permission for it in the first place. So it was how, yeah, they could just get away with clearing that amount of land. And he went into like explicit details of how they had, like, some of the trees were just like these giants, and they had to build these big mounds up so the big bulldozer could like go up higher and just push the tree down from a higher point because it wouldn't move otherwise. And yeah, it just struck me, like I could just visualize these tassel ferns on these old mature phase species trees just like getting knocked down, and then he shared like they'd pile it all up into big piles and just set fire to it. And like, yeah, so shocking, so brutal. But then the healing aspect within that is like the same person who was a part of, as a child, it would have just been normal. He wouldn't have known anything else. Like, this is fun kind of thing. He's a part of this full circle moment, and he was like, yeah, it's kind of cool that I'm here with you guys helping you greenies just regenerate this property now. And yeah, it really was that full circle moment, and learning more about it now to bring back that tassel fern. It's not as simple as just plant trees. And with a permaculture lens, I've often thought that like a rainforest has like several different layers. It's so much more than just trees. There's the ground covers and the vines and so much more diversity. And so for example, to return a tassel fern, you need to plant the specific tree that would have been the host tree for the tassel fern, that specific tassel fern in the first place, and then plant like a big epiphyte, a staghorn, on that tree. And then either through actual conservation efforts, bring a tassel fern and put it on that tree and hope that it'll start to spread spores and return. But it just gave me so much insight as to the original landscape. So like regeneration and restoration, there's so many layers for that original habitat to return to its pristine state. And I guess we don't really know how long that could take and if it could ever really return to that pristine state. But we're certainly doing our best to try and bring that back as much as possible.
Sounds like a real fun gully story. I think that movie or cartoon as a child was a big opening. Like, I just remember being so scared and horrified by watching this movie, but it really was an anchor of like, oh, this rainforest destruction is happening. And it's that was set in Terania Creek in the Shannon area, the story of that. But it's, we look at the Tarkine and everything that happened in the land clearing in Tasmania, and it kind of silently happened in the Daintree. And so it's so inspiring and encouraging to hear, what ClimateForce is doing up there. And I know there's a few other initiatives in the Daintree Rainforest Rescue, and I'm on a mailing list for Daintree. I can't remember what it's called, but they are so many philanthropists or people are just donating to buy back land for revegetation. And it's millions of years old. It's such an ancient rainforest. And yeah, just visiting the Daintree, you can see, I live in Kuranda and Jabberkai country, and you can see where in the new re-veg there's a lot of acacia and first succession trees, but all the ancient trees were taken down. The hues just logged, massively logged. And what you've come across this endemic tassel fern, and what else and then put a focus and explored the story of that to a degree. But what else is missing that we and medicine, it's just it's
Yeah,
great that yeah.
Yeah, well, like even imagining those, the traditional significance of a lot of those giant trees would have been birthing trees, and where so many placentas would have been buried and would have had so much cultural significance as well. Another really interesting one is Musa jackii, which I also very synchronistically had just found these seeds in my hand. It's one of the most endangered native bananas. So there's two native bananas. The word Musa jackii and might be Bancroftii. It's the more common one is the other one. Sorry, the name is not. It's not in my mind right now. But I was given these seeds by someone, and he told me, he's like, these are really rare banana seeds. Grow these. He found them way out in the Daintree rainforest somewhere. And so I started growing them, and I had all these bananas pop up, and somehow the Cairns JCU found out about it, and the herbarium found out about it. And they were like, hey, this is like one of the number one endangered species that we're trying to like grow. We have one other, and like genetic diversity is really important for disease prevention and strength as well. And so since then, I've been able to gift a few of these Musa jackii to Cairns, to the Townsville Botanical Gardens, and to a few different areas to be able to preserve the longevity of that species. And however that can be used in future, there's so many diseases in the banana industry, but we do have some really interesting natives that are so close. Like there's often so much emphasis on endangered animals, and of course, like cute little fluffy animals, I absolutely love them, but also like what are those animals going to do without the habitat? And there's not often as much emphasis put on botanical endangered species, and there are so many of those, and we're still learning so much. There's still so much to learn about the habitat. That I remember there was a story about like this particular blue tassel fern. The botanist was saying like he's got no idea how it spores and how it reproduces, although there's the other ones that they've already worked out. And then in the discovery of trying to preserve one of these blue tassel ferns before Cyclone Jasper came along, to have one in captivity to try and get that one growing just in case all the three left in the wild disappear, they found like this rare cockroach that he showed to one of his entomologist friends, and his friend was just like, we've never seen this cockroach before, like it's completely undescribed. And so like this cockroach was connected to this tassel fern, and then it was like a couple of theories, nothing sort of grounded yet, but that maybe this cockroach has been a part of spreading the spores of this tassel fern to the other one, like a part of that process that we just still don't know. So there's so much discovery still in this area, and I mean this rainforest being my focus, I'm not sure if it's just this rainforest, but I'm sure it's all over the country and all over the world, where we still have so much to learn about how different plants and different trees are hosts for so many other different forms of life. Not to mention like the medicinal aspects and the food, and how many different roots we could have eaten. And bush tucker is a really interesting thing too. I really enjoy exploring different bush tuckers and being able to experience eating native foods like the black bean, which is a bit of a taboo because it's quite a process to treat that so it's not poisonous anymore. But once eating it, like I've roasted it after the treatment process by the fire, and it's like a giant Australian chestnut, like so tasty, but also so abundant. Like there are so many black beans all over the region.
Yeah, absolutely. And think in our last conversation, what was I? I think I was asking you if you have, like there's restaurants and, the hospitality industry down here in Cairns are really seeking access to native fruit bounties to be able to make things with it and to provide that as jams or whatever in their menus for tourists to come. They're quite interested in it. And you were telling me about some of the ones that you guys are propagating and have access to. We also talked about coconuts and do you want to kind of speak to that as well?
Yeah, so we're growing a lot of bush tucker, lots of Morinda citrifolia, the noni, which I'm not sure if there's like some kind of cheese that restaurants could make out of it, but it's obviously pretty, for those who've tasted it, know it's a pretty intense fruit flavor. I've had so many healing experiences with the noni too, like plant out one, we all had COVID-19 with just like 3 of us trying to plant trees and we're just feeling really not good. And I remember eating a couple of nonis and just having like those enzymes just blast through my mouth and just like felt like I had a little bomb exploding in my mouth of enzymes, and just like the virus felt like it just got blasted out of my system completely. So like the medicinal value of noni, I think is significant, but then also, it's not very tasty. So if that can be like turned into something a little bit more like blue cheese style, maybe there'd be a potential for restaurants to take that on. But maybe also like a bit of space for some education on different types of native edibles. Like we've got the wongai tree, which is a pretty sacred tree to Torres Strait Islanders, and it's kind of got like a small plum-like fruit. It's actually really tasty. So that's a good tasting bush tucker. And yeah, I'm not sure if many people beyond Torres Strait Islanders and First Nations people have much knowledge on it, but yeah, there's quite a few that could potentially be used. And yeah, like the coconut, like you were saying, I really am coconut obsessed and have had a relationship with coconuts for so many years. And one of my introductions to coconuts was like this survival, like in my early 20s, just trying, before I did my permaculture course and trying to understand like what my place is in the world. I remember just being like, I'm going to forage food for a couple of months and not go to the supermarket and see what I can live off. And it was hard. And through that process, out of hunger, I learned to climb a coconut tree. And then was just like, wow, a whole new universe opened up to me, like coconuts. And my friends and I that are like coconut obsessed, we joke about coconut consciousness, because once you just eat coconuts for a little while, you just get into this consciousness kind of state where you just want to make everything from your own hands and just grow everything in the garden. And yeah, it's a survival food, but it's also so rich and such hard work. Climbing the tree, gathering the nut, opening the nut, like everything about it is hard work, but it's just so worth the hard work once you get to tap into that goodness. Yeah. So rewarding.
And there's nothing like fresh coconut cream that you've made. I mean, relatively, it's quite easy if you've got the coconut grater tool and you make it all the time as well. And it just, nothing compares. You can't create a meal that tastes the same with fresh coconut as canned coconut, as much as you try.
So good. Like some taro coconut cream with lemongrass and just like the simplicity, but the goodness and the richness. Yeah, fresh coconut cream is the best.
And last time,
I don't understand.
We're talking about how, there's like this war on coconuts as well. And, from our permaculture observation perspective of, principle 1, observe and interact, we can see how coconuts have this matting root system that hold and prevent erosion along all of the coastline. Yet there's councils, for whatever reason, if they're worried about nuts dropping are cutting down the coconuts, which I think people from around the world and other places of Australia come to visit the tropics and have that quintessential experience of coconuts on the beach. And in other countries, there's coconut culture, like there's, industry in coconuts. And I've always wondered why that's not really happening here. Like one of the first things we did on our property in Colwer is plant a coconut grove. But there's this, even in university, there's people trying to say that coconuts are not native, yet they've been here for a long time. And even if they've, naturalized, they play such an important role in the ecosystem. And it was you that was telling me about the fossil, the coconut fossil. Could you share?
Yeah, so there's a good resource. So I mean, there's so many articles out there about. I just looked at one the other day from 2016 of romanticizing coconuts. The beautiful image of far north Queensland. It's actually a tropical weed, and just like this kind of like fear of the coconuts. And following all of that, Andre Liu, who I think is like the manager of the World Organic Food Association, something along those lines. He has written an article about fossilized records found of coconuts from like Central Australia. And so there is like a more native version to Australia, which might have a skinnier nut. But I just still don't understand how them being designed to float across the ocean and sprout, how they wouldn't be native to here if they haven't been able to sprout here and grow here. And but that's a really good resource. And it's kind of sad that it's still happening. Like I remember a few years ago there was a real local outrage when council had made an open and public statement that they had like a map of all the coconuts that they were going to kill in the region, and people got really outraged and so many people protested it, and it seemed to have stopped. Like there was silence after that, and there were a few coconuts that got killed, but that seemed to be it. And then I've just noticed in the last year that now it's coconuts are being like cut down and mulched, but in silence. So there's not as much of there's no noise about it this time round. And I'm wondering if it's because of all the activism and the protesting that took place the first time round, and they just copped too much confrontation around that. And it's a bit sad that it's happening again. And it's just, unfortunately, it just makes me just want to, that's one of the reasons I was so inspired to buy property and buy land, because it's like, okay, no one can come on my property and cut down the coconut trees or anything I plant. Like that's the one place that I have some sort of, that's a safe place anyway. And so, plant coconuts on your own property everywhere. I've done it. But I mean, it's so nice finding a wild coconut growing by the sea as well. Like it's just those electrolytes and how good it is for our health. Like it's such a health food fad at the moment. And for years now, like it's a real big deal. And yet I don't understand as well why we don't have a culture for coconuts growing and more of an industry, people selling coconuts on the side of the road. I know there's like you can buy coconuts from the Port Douglas markets. Mossman Market seems to have been shut down mainly, but there's just no coconut culture here really. And like my ultimate vision, I feel like I've shared this with you, but I'll share it once more. With all this like fallowed sugarcane land now between Mossman and the Daintree, like I would just love to see coconut plantations in a diverse way with cacao in the understory and then vanilla growing on the cacao and maybe some durians and ginger and turmeric and just this beautiful diverse system, but that tourists and locals and people traveling in the area can have access to a fresh drinking coconut if they want, and they don't have to go to the supermarket and buy something that's like traveled X amount of kilometers and is in a little container and is probably not got much life force left in it.
Yeah.
Maybe one
homogenized,
day.
highly
Yeah.
processed in tin or plastic. People still love it though, and it's like it's one step closer to hydrolytes, but it doesn't compare. And I definitely share that vision with you as well. I just think, wow, imagine if there was a grid of these places that people could, the food tourism aspect of coming and staying in a food forest, an agroforestry farming system, and participate and eat fresh from it. Like that's next level connection to how food is grown, and probably in what we can see in the permaculture world, the most efficient and effective way. Because as you said at the very beginning, from observing the beautiful Daintree rainforest around you, is there's no inputs needed. And I've done a lot of, very little. I've done a lot of episodes now where the conversation keeps coming back to food forestry or agroforestry with syntropic systems or variations of. And I think anyone who's really successfully growing perennial food in a really easy way, with a high yield production, it's all coming from these food forestry systems. So just highlighting that's really important. And then the aspect of integrating native plants, I think, is not always a high focus. And so I really love how you bring that element to it of the native bush tuckers in amongst it. And because we can use all of the principles of succession and starting out with the chop and drops, and building the layers and the microbial and fungal layers, and really building up the system to replicate a forest. But if we have that knowledge that I think you have, ClimateForce as a key there of natives, then we're encouraging that the invitation for, or the space for, the native animals and the endemic species to be able to return. Hopefully, it's not just all about us and our yield. It's integrating the nature's place, or the native plants equally into these systems.
Yeah, and I think those natives can be integrated into that agroforestry style chop and drop system and can do a really good job with that. Like Acacia mangium is one thing that we're focusing on for that, because it's a high nitrogen fixing tree, and then it does attract all those native insects and bugs. And yeah, it's just I think I've heard that in Vietnam they've got it planted everywhere, and apparently they're planting it in amongst their fruit orchards as well, but they're also planting it as like windbreaking walls, because it's just so easy to grow so many side by side. And that's one that we're really focusing on, because it just grows so quick. It's a really strong pioneer. And then we're going to grow the cacao underneath that. So to even there's so many, like the ingas, the ice cream beans, there's so many fruit tree versions you can use for that as well. But just to mix it up, try working with different trees. I think it's nice to just work with different types of trees and get to know their different personalities and the different effects that it has on your food forests and it has on your soil, and that mulch system that we can create.
Yeah, beautiful. And acacias, so many species in Australia growing in all different types of climates. So it's like, okay, well, let's lean on the one that is most present and vibrant here. It's already here doing the job. So plant more of them.
It wants to.
It wants to grow here.
Yeah.
It's been such a lovely share. I'm just wondering, before we say goodbye today, is there anything else that's alive and thriving in your life right now um, that you want to bring to the front of the conversation?
Yeah, I haven't shared too much about other herbs, but herb-wise, I love mugwort. I put it under my pillow every day, and I especially, yeah, I notice my dreams are a lot more vibrant, and I remember them. They're a lot more colorful, and it definitely impacts my dream state. But if I've had like a big day working on my feet, and my legs are sore and my muscles are sore generally, I'll make a mugwort foot bath, and that's been like really good for easing muscle pains as well. But besides herbs, yeah, I'm just starting to get the winter gardens ready. I'm a little bit late this year. I'm jealous of all my friends that already got their snake beans growing and their cucumbers growing. I'm like, oh, that should be me. But I have just really a lot of fruit trees, a lot of dragon fruits. They are doing so well on this land, which is so good. They just keep on fruiting multiple times a year. And lots of turmeric, lots of ginger, passion fruits, bulk passion fruits, and yeah, generally lots of fruit trees. But I've got cassava growing. I'd like to get more cassava and more taro and more perennial greens, like a lot of Okinawa spinach and Ceylon spinach. But then would also like to get a bit of the wintry crops like rocket and just more yums from the garden, because it's really the best. And I'm finding that my home space is having more and more people staying in it, and the more time I can spend in my garden, like I feel the therapeutic benefits from it so strong, and I just start to ground, and I know I really need it. But I've just noticed that if I put a little bit more energy and it is a bit more aesthetic and has a lot more growing in it, that's, I guess, more common, then other people feel more attracted to spending time in that garden as well. And I just know that if it's therapeutic for me, it's surely going to have a beneficial effect on others. So yeah, I mean, I drink herbal teas every day from the garden as well, but yeah, feeling inspired to get back into making more salads and maybe have a read of your book, The Incredible Edibles, and get some more inspiring ideas of yummy recipes that you've designed, because that's the main thing, isn't it? It's just like you can have so much food growing, but it's just about actually finding something creative, to a creative way to put it together and yeah, make it really tasty.
For sure, yeah. And it is the season. It's time. I'm seeing the shift happen here, and to be honest, I planted out snake beans months ago, and also cucumber. And it's only just really taking off now. Like, I'm just so impatient. But we've got the African horn cucumbers, and they're just like, people are coming over and they're like, whoa, why have you got that big weed growing over your elder tree? I'm like, I know it looks like a weed because it's like this epic vine, but it's just taken over. We've got more cucumbers than we can possibly eat right now. And the same as the snake beans, I was getting like a few off, and now I've just noticed all the flowers are popping, and I can't hardly keeping up with how much snake beans are growing, because they grow so fast every day. So the lands are also, in summer and the wet season, it's our limiting factor. In other climates, winter is, and so yeah. Come by whenever you're back in Kuranda. I'm happy to give you a whole heap of the green
love
tea.
some seeds.
Yeah.
That'd be
What
and I
we
just
can eat
love how
over.
I love how your elder tree is a host, because mine's a host for loofahs. It's covered in loofahs at the moment, and it's funny. I'm just like, oh, should I let you guys keep taking over, or just give the elder tree a little bit of breathing space?
Beautiful. Yeah.
So good.
Well, it's good to know the elder tree is super hardy, and it always ends up with something growing on it. But you can cut it right back just to the stump and it will regrow all these fresh, it will just regrow every year. And yeah, it's probably coming up to time like winter, spring is when I find it produces the most fruits and flowers. So it's always evolving, always learning. And I'm the same. I'm like, okay, time to plant out some rocket and some quick pick salad greens in the annual garden. This is the little window of time that we have in our beautiful tropical climate to have these other plants that only visit us and kind of thrive for a few months of the year. And
like I love borage. I feel like it does give you courage, and I can just only grow it in winter, and it does really well in winter. I've even grown like Indian ashwagandha in winter, and all these like really unique plants that only in winter.
Yeah,
it's nice to have just different medicine that time of year, because summer's just like
our tourists, our visitors that come for a short time, and then we've got all of these amazing tropical fruits that just kind of are so abundant and drip through the rest of the wet season, through our summer,
take it,
pull us down and us up. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to again take 2 of our conversation, working in our remote communities where we've got internet issues and all sorts of things going on. So patching 2 episodes together, it's really I feel like we covered a lot. And I've really appreciated spending this time with you in the recording world to, I guess, share with our listeners some of the things that we talk about in everyday life together. Yeah.
It's so good.
Yay. Thank you. Anything you want to say before we say goodbye today?
The only thing I would mention is the waterways, but I don't know if should we tune into that?
Waterways, that amazing report, and that's a key part.
Cool. Just the ending note. So this is actually slightly outdated, I've realized, but it's a report card from 2023, and it's the wet tropic waterways, and it's an amazing map from down south from Ingham and Hinchinbrook north to the Daintree, and it's got the gradings. And so the grading is A is very good, B is good, C is moderate, and D is poor. And so the gradings throughout the whole region, and the only place that has A-grade water is Upper Daintree, which is pretty amazing. But even like Lower Daintree, the estuary area of the Daintree, that already turns into a B-grade, B grading in the water, and that is like probably alongside a lot more farms, and like I mentioned, a lot of erosion and stuff. But from there on, it's like Mossman is B, the Barron is C, the Mulgrave is B, the Russell River is B, the Johnston is B. Everywhere else there is no other area that has A-grade water. And so I guess this is more of like, not I'm boasting because I live here or anything like that, but more of an encouragement of how this report is done so that people have an awareness of how we can try and improve the water quality in all of our areas. And I think planting and planting trees along creek edges and river edges so that there's at least a buffer between river and farm is a big part of it. But just an encouragement to be water aware, and hopefully as a whole, the whole region will have improving water areas, and maybe there will be more A's in the future if we all work towards that. So, yay.
That is a great goal to work towards. All right. Thank you, Liana. Really appreciate it. Bye now.
Bye.
Well, that's a wrap for this episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it now with someone you know will benefit from this information. And remember, we're not just talking about change, we are cultivating it. Through these conversations and through the Elder Tree Patreon community, together we are sowing the seeds for an education centre and healing sanctuary. You can unlock access to our treasure trove of wisdom via our Patreon, so you can do that in the show notes below or from our website. Please subscribe now and leave us a review. It really helps the bots share our podcast with the world, and your support ensures that this podcast and our vision can thrive. To grow them is to know them is to use them is to love them, and then happily herbs become your way of life. May you be blessed with good health and many plants.